Story 10, The Importance of Soap. Runcorn and Widnes were in the 19th century some of the chief manufacturing towns for this most important commodity, helping to keep Victorian Britain and the rest of the world clean and hygienic, or at least less grubby. The accidental discovery of soap is lost in the mist of time, but maybe it goes something like this. Cooking was often done over a wood fire. The wood fire leaves ash behind, and that ash is potash. Cooking meat drips fat, and if the fat drips onto the ash, then a chemical reaction can occur between the two, giving us something rather soap-like and rather wonderful. It's that combination of alkali and fat that gives us soap. So Leblanc's recipe is relevant here, mentioned lots of times in other places. Sodium sulfate from the first stage, reacting with coal and limestone in the second stage to give us sodium carbonate, or soda ash, the alkali, and calcium sulfide. And soap was manufactured in Widnes and Runcorn using that soda ash, combining it with fat. It might have been animal fat, it might have been vegetable fat. The chemical reaction occurs between the two to make the soap. The soap was packed up in boxes, lots of them with wonderful advertisements, and sent off to many corners of the world. Gossage's marbled soap was cheaper than many of the alternatives. Now, the science of soap making is that the soda ash and the fat react together and make new molecules. The science of how it works is that one end of the new molecule is hydrophilic, and in other words, it sticks to water. The other end of the soap molecule is hydrophobic and avoids water, but gets attached to dirt. So dirt or grease gets surrounded by soap, making a word you might have heard of, a micelle, cleanser, facial cleanser, often says it's micellar. So the soap effectively joins dirt to water, so grime gets carried away from the skin. Nasty microorganisms get less of a hold too, getting carried away in the rinse water. More science in a minute, but we're going to look at this lady next. The effect of soap on Victorian Britain and its exports is worth a mention, and maybe looking at hand hygiene in hospitals and Florence Nightingale, how washing helped combat diseases. Now, Florence Nightingale became really important for her work in army hospitals and in devising those hospitals during the Crimean War. She was revolutionary as much for her use of statistics to back up her arguments as she was for the ideas for nursing. She was amazing. There's a link to her story included. There's also a link to public hygiene, to hand washing during the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic, so that children might be able to make a comparison between the advice given now and the advice given 100 years ago. What's the comparison of the past with today? There's also links to Mary Seacole, who again was a nurse. She was born in Jamaica, and she worked in the Crimean War. She was really inspiring. She worked to improve hygiene and the lives and life chances of the soldiers. You might find that there are storybooks about her life for children as well. And then there's the bleach packer. This is a picture from the Birth of an Industry gallery at Catalyst, with the hardest job in the chemical industry, probably his. To survive with that job, you had to be really strong and physically capable. We're providing in the kit, if this is your school, some dressing up kit. The bleach packer would have used something like bandages to wind round his limbs to protect him from the noxious stuff he was having to pack. He'd have had a muzzle around his face as his PPE made from flannel to try not to breathe it in, to stop him being gassed. The bleach packers might have seen themselves as the best workers, and have earned for labourers the best of pay, but few people could stand it for long. A lot of them died young. Very few men in this job get above 60. And sometimes they weren't respected at all by people outside the industry because of what they did. They wore strange dress and they often drank a lot of beer because it was thirsty work, because there was a beer wagon outside the factory, and because doing a job like that made them so thirsty, they just needed a drink. And the packers often had teeth rot away because of the action of the bleach powder on their own teeth. And the digestion was poor from all of that stuff that they'd taken in through their mouths inadvertently. Now, in the 1800s, the late 1800s, there were campaigns to make working life better for 8-hour days. There was the 8-Hour League. And some of the first companies to have these were Widner's chemical companies, for instance, Gaskell Beacon. There's a picture of bleach packers much later. They're beginning to, yes, they have got eye protection on there, so they're better protected, learned about what to do. There's a caustic soda packer, something as corrosive as well. I expect she would have worn some goggles as well. So we can think about all the people who've worked hard in our local chemical industry to spread hygiene around the world. So looking to the future, soap, really important against COVID-19, and bleach. Now we now know just how soap works in more detail because we've got, thanks to STEM, thanks to places like Daresbury, we've got knowledge of what viruses are and how they're put together in nature. When there were pandemics before, like the one in 1919, virology was a young science. The structure of the virus wasn't known. We now know it's got a fatty outer membrane. And recall what soap does to fat. It effectively sticks to it. The tail is able to go into the fat. And what the soap molecules are able to do is rip the virus apart. The genetic material inside that membrane spills out, and each little bit gets surrounded by soap molecules, making loads of individual micelles like here. The virus can no longer replicate, and the micelle, or all of them, are washed away by the water. Soap works better than hand sanitizer because of the way it wraps bits of virus up so that they get carried away. It unsticks the virus from the skin. So soap is brilliant. The next image is of the Castner-Kellner works at Western Point. It uses salt from Cheshire, sodium chloride, and it breaks that down and extracts the chlorine. At Catalyst, there's a whole gallery, the Harry Baker Gallery about chlorine, and it's got a whole load of uses, but one of them is bleach. And bleach has been really important through the pandemic. And very importantly, looking to the future, the Daresbury Science Park has got a whole load of companies working on the future of science, on the future of technology, like the Biterol company, which is working on new antiviral substances made with materials from nature. And there's some links in the teacher's pack, so you can have a glimpse at what they're doing for a healthy future too.